Good morning, good morning, good morning. There are many people here that didn't expect me to be awake. Where is Mr. Brown? He did message me just now and said, "Are you awake?" And I said, "Yes." Morning, Truman.
Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Right,
I
let's
was
be honest.
I was going to say I would swap awake for alive, actually, in terms of my expectations for you this morning.
Well, see this overperform, under deliver. Um, right, let me do the legals if I can read it with one eye closed. Nothing discussed on this space session constitutes trading or investment advice, or infers any kind of endorsement via PIQ Global Limited, trading as PIQ or PIQ Suite, or its affiliates, including the host, which is obviously Mr. Michael Brown, and myself, Mr. Ryan Paisley. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit hungover, but I was in bed quite early doors. That
So
might have
you,
been that might have been because I started a little bit too early.
dearie me. Well, anyway, sadly, I wasn't in bed early doors. Well, actually, that's a lie. I was, but then I woke up again at midnight to cover the election
Well,
through the
a-
night.
actually, do you want to know a fun fact?
Go on.
I actually don't know who's won.
Okay. Are you being serious?
Absolutely, completely serious. Yeah. If you want the full disclosure, I'm currently sitting here naked in
I
bed.
did. Stop right there. Right. Well, while
Who won?
Ryan
Who won?
deals with whatever he's dealing with, let's crack on. Good morning, everybody. Unless your name's Ryan or you've been living under a rock for the last 8 hours or so, Donald Trump has won the
Oh, there
presidential
he is.
election. He will become only the second man after Grover Cleveland to serve two non consecutive terms as president of the
Oh, look at you
United
with a
States.
fact.
And actually, to be completely honest with you, it was not even close. The race was officially called by Decision Desk HQ, who have been the quickest off the mark in calling these races at around about 6:25 this morning. As we currently stand, Trump has 280 electoral college votes. Kamala Harris has 226. Of course, you need 270 to win a majority in the electoral college, so
Oh,
Trump is
romp dome.
comfortably over that mark. We're still waiting for the states of Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada to be called. So it looks like Trump could get over 300
Oof.
electoral votes. And even more staggeringly than that, it looks like Trump is set to actually win the popular vote, which even back in 2016 he wasn't actually able to win. So I think on any metric you look
Oh,
at it,
it's an
firstly
absolute whitewash.
indeed. Firstly, it's a very, very convincing victory for Trump. And secondly, it was a lot more straightforward of an evening and of an election day than I and I think most others expected. We were all thinking this was going to be very, very drawn out. And of course, that hasn't proved to be the case. We actually found out the result, or the official result was called about an hour earlier than the 2016 election, which is quite staggering.
Which was about what time?
So it was called this morning at 25 past six.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, long haul.
yeah, so we're talking, 25 past one in the morning in the United States, and the election is over. In terms of the sort of broad trend of the election, I think what we've seen is obviously a surge in support for Trump, which the polls seem to get wrong. But also, Harris has not racked up the votes where we expected them to be racked up. And actually, in a number of key counties, and I refer, of course, to Helen Thomas's brilliant sort of cheat sheet that she put together here. A number of counties, actually, Harris's vote share fell compared to that was achieved by President Biden 4 years ago. So for the Democrats, the presidency has clearly not gone as they expected. But actually, some of the down ballot races are even more interesting than that because the Republicans have, as we expected, flipped the Senate. So the GOP are now in control of the Senate. They've won at least 51 seats in the upper house of Congress, and we're still waiting for a number of those seats to be declared. And then in terms of the House, that is looking very, very much 50-50. There are a number of states on the West Coast where we're still waiting, particularly in California, where we're still waiting for some further details. It could take about a week or so for the makeup of the House to be known, but it does look like that potential red wave scenario where the Republicans control the presidency, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. It does look as if that could well be on the cards. We have heard from President Trump this morning. It was quite a rambling address at about 2 o'clock in the morning in Florida. There was of any interest in it, to be completely honest with you. It was a very kind of boilerplate speech thanking his supporters for the opportunity they've
Oh,
given him,
do you know what?
etc., etc., etc.
That's 2 a.m. our time, right?
No, 2 a.m. US time, so 7
Oh,
o'clock here.
okay. Yeah, I was trying to think what time I fell out the the Stafford. I can't remember.
Probably best not to think about it, mate, to be completely honest with you. One person who we will not be hearing from today is Kamala Harris. She has done exactly what Hillary Clinton did in 2016 and sent out some poor campaign aides to tell all of
Oh
her waiting
no,
supporters to
she
say,
didn't.
Kamala Harris isn't going to speak today. You can all go home now.
No.
Yes, exactly. Which she did this probably about an hour and a half before the election result was called. Let me
Never a
stress that
great sign.
Harris, no, she has not conceded the election. She's going to lose, but she hasn't conceded it. But when I was talking to the guys at News Squawk all night, and when that happened, you kind of go, yeah, she knows this is
Yeah,
over.
come on.
So the election result, thankfully, relatively straightforward, and actually the market reaction to the election result has been relatively straightforward as well, and pretty much exactly what we would have expected to see, given the results that have come in, and that is some fairly significant upside in the dollar. The dollar index, as I speak, and again, if you're listening to this on rewind or catch up or whatever you call it, bear in mind these numbers will have changed. The dollar index is currently
They ain't
trading
your
around,
numbers.
well, exactly. The dollar index currently trading around 1.5% higher, north of the 105 handle. If that holds into the close, that would be the best day for the dollar index since March of 2020. Pretty much all G10s are trading a fair chunk softer against the dollar, and weakness has been concentrated in those currencies which are likely to be hit or potentially hit by tariffs. So the euro at one point was down around about 2%, testing the 107 figure to the downside. The Mexican peso is still trading, what, 3.5% softer. Well, that has paired a little bit of those losses in recent trade. And
And
the
to be fair,
Chinese,
the peso is one that we said to could be kind of the one that gets absolutely massacred if Trump does
absolutely.
bomb home.
Absolutely. And the Chinese renminbi, that's trading around 1% softer, although there were some reports overnight that Chinese banks were being asked to sell dollars to try and
Yeah, I
sort of
bet.
stem the bleeding there. So bear that one in mind. One thing that is just worth noting, though, and I know this is something I use a lot, and it's something also that Arno Venter uses a lot, our good friend. The moves that we've seen in the FX space have been almost to the pip contained within the trading ranges that were implied from the overnight implied volatility readings, which does just speak to their utility engaging potential moves
Nice,
over a big
nice.
event like this. In terms of other assets, another sort of barometer of the Trump trade is the crypto space. We see some decent upside in Bitcoin, which is about 6% higher and did touch a record high during the small hours of the morning when Ryan was crawling around on the floor somewhere. And
I
we
have
also
no
see
idea.
Ethereum trading around 7% higher as well. In the equity space, solid gains across the board. The S&P 500 future up by 2.1%, touching fresh day highs as I speak, and the Nasdaq trading up by around 1.75%. We also see European equities trading firmer. They were down. Futures in Europe were down by about 1% in a knee-jerk reaction to to Trump's victory, although we have seen markets pair losses quite considerably since then. We now see most bourses up by between 1 and 2%. And last but by no means least, some selling pressure coming in across the Treasury curve, which has bear steepened quite significantly. The 10 and 30-year yields were both up by around 20 basis points overnight, but we have paired around a third of those losses as London trading has got underway. So I guess the question now is what comes next? I think the first consideration in the immediate term, at least, is finalising the election result, chiefly in terms of who wins the House. If we see the Republicans gain control of the House, then that is likely to result in a much greater degree of fiscal stimulus and fiscal loosening, and that could be the sort of kicker for another leg lower in treasuries, obviously yields moving higher, and perhaps another leg higher in the dollar, which would be tagging along with that move. Of course, then attention will turn to what Trump might actually do once he is inaugurated in around 2.5 months' time. And in that respect, we start thinking about who is going to be in the cabinet. Of course, markets will care principally over the Treasury Secretary role, which was last time round filled by my lookalike, Steve Mnuchin. And also, given Trump's tendency to look at tariffs very closely, market participants will also concern themselves with who takes the job of US trade representative. No real word on when those appointments will be made. I think it's far too soon, but something that will be on participants' minds as we move through the next few days and weeks. And also, the other thing to bear in mind is whether we get any sort of guidance towards what Trump is going to do on day one. Any executive orders that might be put in place, any appointments, any policies, all that kind of thing. We're now kind of playing the much longer game. The initial risk around the election has been cleared up, and I think positioning, of course, is a lot lighter as well. And now that political uncertainty is out of the way, perhaps you will see risk move higher in a more meaningful manner. There are a few other things that I thought it was worth mentioning this morning, because given that it was election day yesterday, it was probably quite a good day to be burying some bad news. So that is exactly what happened here in the UK, where we had a 10-year gilt auction yesterday that attracted the least demand since December of 2023. So continued indigestion going on in terms of the budget, which was unveiled a week ago now. The market's still a little bit jittery in terms of the fixed income complex here in the UK. And Apple were also trying to bury a bit of bad news of their own yesterday. They are going to be the first company to face a fine under the EU's Digital Markets Act. Not exactly sure what that fine is for, but nonetheless, the EU's tendency to just go and slap fines and regulation on people for the sake of it continues. In terms of today, it is a very, very quiet docket lying ahead.
Oh, thank
We do
God
have
for that.
some well, exactly. We do have some PMI figures out of the Eurozone this morning. They are
Yes.
final figures for October, so they're not going to cause any market movement. We also have PPI this morning, but that data is for September. So again, that should be a little bit of a snoozer. And the only other thing really worth bearing in mind is we have a 30-year auction out of the US, but that doesn't come until 6 o'clock this evening when they auction off $25 billion worth of 30-year bonds. Oh, and we do hear from ECB President Lagarde today as well. But
Oh, God.
I think that is the absolute last thing that any market participant needs on a day like today. But to sum up, Trump has won the presidential election in what was a much more straightforward election night than I and, excuse me, most other market participants have been expecting. The market reaction has also been relatively straightforward and relatively textbook as well, with the dollar moving to the upside, treasuries selling off, led by the long end, and futures rallying. And I guess really the question now is focus will turn to what Trump does in his second term and final term, of course, as president of the United States.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mr. Brown. I would love to add some more, but to be honest, I
Well,
can't see through.
I was going to say I didn't want to be uncharitable, but
No,
yeah,
no, no.
I thought it best not to
We
ask.
we both know that you did the right thing by just glossing over my section. Well, one thing I will note is David Lammy this morning congratulating Donald Trump. However, in 2017, he did say, "Yes, if Trump comes to the UK, I will be protesting on the streets because I quote a racist KKK and Nazi sympathiser." So we'll see how the special relationship develops after this. But yeah, great
Well,
one.
it's funny you say that because I fully agree. And
What
David Lammy's a
with
bit of a
Lammy?
no, with you. David Lammy's a
Oh,
complete muppet. But apparently he is. I'm not going to go as far as saying best mates, but apparently he has a very good relationship with JD Vance, despite having called his boss every insult under the sun. Apparently he gets on quite well with the new vice president. So we'll see what happens there, I guess.
so fingers crossed then.
Yeah, all hope might not be quite lost just yet.
Oh, perfect. Well, Mr. Brown, thank you as always. If I sober up in the next couple of hours, I might treat. Oh no, you're in Tunbridge Wells, aren't you? You're not even in
I
London
am.
today.
Yes. No. I'm not making it into the
Oh,
city today. I'm going to leave the desk shortly for the first time in 9 hours and go and get myself a bit of breakfast and put my feet up in a dark room somewhere. I think.
I might go and throw up.
Oh God.
I'll be honest, I'm not feeling
Apologies,
very well.
listeners.
I'm not feeling very well. Right, Mr. Brown, thank you as always. Listeners, thank you. And we will see you tomorrow.
We will indeed. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye.